Hey, everybody. Curt Schilling here. Welcome to the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, episode 34. Going to get right into it, and we're going to start the top of the show with the guy at the top of the game, Shohei Ohtani. I'm gonna list off some statistics real quick. Runs, hits, home runs, base on balls, RBIs, stolen bases, average, on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, wins, ERA, and strikeouts. Those are the categories that Shohei Ohtani leads the Anaheim Angels in. And not only that, but he had his 24th home run on Sunday, 15-game hitting streak. The last week for him, this last week, Monday he hit 2, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday he hit 1 each. So I'm done. You know what, Bill? I think, and I honestly mean this, I've said to you, and I've said many times, that I think Mike Trout will be the greatest player alive, anybody alive sees. I don't know that I can make that case anymore.
I'm not sure you can anymore.
I think he may be one of the greatest hitters that ever lived. I think he already is. But this young man is again, and I feel like I say this every week. When you're talking about something for a first in a sport that's over a century old, century and a half old, you're talking about something special. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything close to it.
There truly hasn't been anything close to it in the history of baseball.
Nope. I mean, people want to talk about Babe Ruth, but again, Babe Ruth wasn't the cleanup hitter and the opening day starter for the Yankees. He did both. They overlapped, but there was never a time when he was an everyday guy. And I based on his appearance physically, I don't think he ever probably could have. But this kid, he's the fastest in Angels history to 150 home runs. And that is not a small thing. Obviously, they're not an original franchise, but when you look at the Angels in the history of some players there with the Pujols and Tim Salmon and Troy Glaus and Garrett Anderson, there have been some pretty damn good offensive players. So in his past 8 games, coming into Sunday, he's hitting 421. He's hitting 421 in June, 536 over the last 8, with 9 home runs, 6 doubles, and 19 RBIs. So he's going to win the Player of the Month, and it's just about halfway through. But so what we do, guys, we generally have topics, and the guys and I will sit around, or they'll sit around, and we'll run through topics. And generally, they'll put some questions at the end for me about kind of their look at it. And the question here is, can you put into words how good he is? Nope. Have you ever seen anything like him? Nope. He is, and here's the thing. It might be uncomfortable to the point of weirdness. He's the MVP. There is no more valuable player in baseball than this guy. None. Not even close. If you're taking his offensive numbers alone, he might battle for the MVP. If he was a pitcher alone, he might battle for the Cy Young. But as an MVP, as long as he stays healthy, he should have the award every year. Because value-wise, wow. What's the saying? Bill, go woke, go broke. In 125 years, it has not happened. The Giants beat the Dodgers 15-0 on Saturday. According to ESPN stats and info, the Dodgers loss was their largest defeat during a shutout at home in 125 years, dating back to an 1898 matchup against the Pirates. You know what? Karma is a beautiful thing. I don't know, Bill, I don't know if you saw it, though. The picture of the stadium the day after the Pride Day.
Yeah.
It looked like the offseason. There was 200 people in the shot with it behind home. That was a no-win, and I think they created a no-win situation, Bill, but I think the mishandling of it made it way worse than it ever should have been.
I totally agree.
So, and then I don't want to ever create a Curt Schilling baseball show jinx, but we mentioned Dodger pitcher Bobby Miller the other day about his incredible start. And then he followed that up with 7 earnings in a little over 5 innings. The Giants are now a half game behind the Dodgers for second and 4.5 behind Arizona. 4.5 behind Arizona. Let that sink in because that's real. What's the worst? And so the question after this one is, what the worst loss I've ever been a part of? I don't know. I don't remember. I was a part of enough of them that they kind of meld together. Because generally when you're on the bench as a pitcher and those things are happening, you're not paying attention in any capacity because the game's over like after the sixth.
Well, I've heard guys say they don't care. 15-0 is better than 1-0.
Absolutely. No, all losses are not created equal. You know what? The loss on April 5th of 15-0, 5 games into the season is a lot different than the loss on September 30th when I don't know if you remember, it was 93, I think. The Dodgers and Giants went into the final day of the season. And I want to say the Giants drubbed them like 12-0, or the Dodgers beat the Giants because I remember Piazza homering a couple times. They beat them like 10-0. And it was a one game they had to play to get into the postseason or whatever the Giants did. And, that was painful. But blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. What you don't want to do, Bill, you don't want to lose a game and embarrass yourself doing it. In the sense that, not hustling or nonchalanting things or acting and looking like you don't care. Those are the things that you stay away from in a 15-0 loss. So yeah. I just saw this, Bill. I just read the article. Rob Manfred, here's the quote. I am sure that out of an abundance of caution and good judgment, umpires have had questionable situations that they decided just not quite sure, and I am 100% certain they err on the side of no violation. Manfred went on to say nothing arbitrary about the enforcement. The umpires all receive uniform training on what the use of rosin on the mound in the way that is allowed under the rules, what that feels like and what it feels like when you're doing something illegal, either combining it with rubbing alcohol or sunscreen or some other sticky substance. I guess, Bill, I'd come back with you. What's the point? Why would he say that? What is he doing? He's the commissioner of the game. He's the steward. His job is to promote baseball. I don't know why he would put an adversarial position out there for something like this. I don't really get it. I don't think it matters. I don't think it had much of an impact, if any, because when it comes to on the field stuff and playing, I think the commissioner's at the bottom of the list of things players care about and listen to.
Well, I think one of the things this commissioner really doesn't like is when players are upset about how the game is being adjudicated. And
right.
Pitchers universally are saying, we don't know what the line is.
Right.
And how you cross that line to having too sticky a substance on your hand.
Right. Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. And I think I've told you this, Bill. I was a player rep in 1994. I met Rob Manfred when he was Bud Selig's assistant. I love the guy. I've always loved the guy. I disagree with him on a lot of things. But I love him. I think contrary to what you might think he's saying and doing, I always felt like baseball being the best sport it could be was always at the core of who he was. That doesn't mean I agree with his decisions or anything like that. But what you're doing as commissioner in baseball is akin to herding cats when it comes to the major league. 30 billionaires, some far more billionish than others. Trying to get them to agree on something is like trying to get your wife to agree on where you're going to go to dinner that night. But I don't know that I don't see the point in the comment, I guess is what I'm saying. Even if it was a question he was asked, I feel like he has better PR savvy than what there's no upside to him talking about it like that.
Because he definitely comes off like he's calling the players out.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you don't want it. That shouldn't be anything. Hey, I found this interesting. Craig Kimbrell was called for 3 pitch clock violations in 1 inning. 1 on an 0-2 count. And I think all 3 were intentional. in the sense that I think he didn't feel the need to hurry up. I got to tell you, there's some merit. I wonder. So when it's an 0-2 count and I throw a pitch 0-2, I'm setting up the 1-2 pitch. If it's an 0-2 count and the pitch clock forces it to 1-2, does anything change from the hitter's perspective? I don't know. That's actually, I was thinking about that. It was
that's really interesting. And someone who commands the strike zone like Kimbrel, I can see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, because again, especially I'm with Maddox. There is no waste pitch. You can get an out with every pitch. And 0-2, the unfortunate part is young players are taught the wrong philosophy 0-2. The point is you have a hitter in such a deep hole, and the metrics and statistics say he shouldn't get a hit. And generally, when guys get 0-2 hits, they're hitting, for the most part, hitting a mistake. But 0-2, I'm doing some things specifically for the 1-2 pitch. I don't do those. I wonder if what that mentality and that philosophy potentially changes. And then you guys listed, so from 1998 to 2023, Major League teams hitting under 240. From 1998 to 2009, no team did it. So starting in 2010 to this year, here's the number of teams each year from 2010 on that have hit under 240. 1, 2, 5, 5, 4, 0, 1, 1, 8, 4. Starting in 2020, 11, 12, 14, and there are 9 this year. This is absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt, the direct result of the new hitting philosophy, that whole swing up idiocy. Because coaches, and I think it's a horrible philosophy. Coaches, it's not, listen, I honestly believe that you'd have RJ would have struck out 400 guys in the game today, if guys were taking strikeouts that nonchalantly. Strikeouts, the only thing you can do as a hitter that I don't need anybody on the defense to act and perform. So real quick, there's a lot of surprises. This is I didn't see. The Reds won their 8th straight on Sunday, sweeping Houston, 8-1 over the last on their last 9-game road trip, 11 their last 13. Half game behind Milwaukee in the Central. By the way, 7-15 on April 23rd. But fascinating stuff. Julio Rodriguez joins Fernando Tatis as the youngest player to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases, the quickest. Took him 200 games to go 40-40. Tatis Jr. did it in 185. Nobody has achieved it faster in baseball dating back 120 years. Pretty amazing.
40-40 is a tremendous year.
Yeah.
They did it in 200 games.
Right.
That one blew my mind.
Well, here's the thing. And real quickly on the next point, Zach Remillard came up in a game. This is his debut. He walks in the 5th inning, bunts for a single in the 7th, singles to 11th in the 9th to tie the game. Then in the 11th, he singles home the winning run. He's the only player since 1901 to have a game-tying hit and a go-ahead hit in the 9th inning or later in the Major League Baseball debut. And the question you guys asked me, I think, is really, really appropriate. There seems to be a lot of history being made around the league. Lots of records that have stood for a long time. Is this generation player that good? Why is this happening? Okay, that thing I just read you there, Bill, that's not a record. This is what happens when you have really astute guys like Cal and John looking 24/7 for stuff. The amount of we're talking about things that aren't records. We're talking about things that are, unique and never been done. Well, I'll bet you that I have struck out more hitters on a Tuesday for a 1:15 start time on the East Coast time zone between April 5th and May 7th. With the statistics available now, you can shape a story around something that a statistical anomaly. So no, I do believe that talent is off the charts in the big leagues, but I don't think that we're not seeing DiMaggio's 56 gamer or Hank Aaron's 61. Babe Ruth 60, 61 Maris and Mantle and all that stuff. We're not seeing those things. We're seeing stuff like that, which again, it's cool. And I think it's interesting in the sense that they're calling out things we would have never known, Bill. We would have never known these things if they weren't pointed out to us. All right. So Julio Rodriguez goes 40-40 in the first 200 games of his career. Who thinks to look up that stat? Not you.
No.
Nobody at the park. You know, and it points to something. You know, Tatis did it in 185 games, fastest ever. I don't know what that means. Obviously it means he's incredibly talented, but I bet you that if you go back, Ted Williams did some stuff that no one's ever done before that we don't know about. With regards to swinging and missing. I'm sure Ruth did some stuff that we don't know about that would be, you can find, it's almost like a political argument for the most part. Both sides can find a solid foundation to make an argument for their point. You can find anything to back up a statistic if you want to disparage a player or promote a player. So let me clarify what this list is. Top 5 players that didn't live up to the hype. Now, these are not players that didn't live up to the hype because of they were bad people or did bad things. These were players that weren't the superstars I thought they were going to be. In many cases, they were still, well, not many, but in some cases, they were still very, very good big league players. A couple of them. But in other cases, you maybe recognize a couple of names. There's a couple you might not know. And this is not a bad list. I'm not pointing, this isn't a bad thing. These are just guys, for whatever reason, for most of them, it's injuries that delayed and stalled their career and held them up. And some of them just didn't take the next step. But one of the top ones on my list is a guy I play with in Arizona who is a dear, dear friend. I love him to death. I thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer. Junior Spivey. I thought he'll be on my top 5 bodies list too. Best built teammates I ever had. But Junior could do it all. He was a middle linebacker built who played second base. He could hit for power. He was a phenomenal kid too. He was just the perfect young baseball player. I thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer. He had a very good career, long career in Arizona, then went to Milwaukee. Great teammate. I love playing with him, but he never became the superstar that I thought he was going to be. And I don't think it was for any one reason. I don't, and I can't pinpoint it, but it wasn't work ethic because he worked as hard as anybody I ever played with. It wasn't attitude. He was a great teammate. Maybe I just expected him to be more than he expected himself to be or whatever, but I thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer. The other big one, that and he was an underachiever because I think the expectations were unrealistic, was Greg Jeffries. I played with Greg in Philadelphia. I loved playing with Greg. He was a funny guy. He was beyond talented. But he was going to be the next Joe DiMaggio, the next Mickey Mantle, and all the things that go with that. And I think that I'll tell you honestly, and I think I said this before, I think Greg ended up being his own worst enemy, in the sense that Greg Jeffries took every out he made during a season to heart. Now, you love the gamer attitude and the never giving up an at bat. He never gave away an at bat. But it's not feasible to play a big league season and hit 650 times and make 400 outs and go berserk after every single one. It's just not physically sustainable. And he couldn't not, and he got better, worse sometimes. And it was, like I said, it was never effort. He worked hard, became a very good outfielder when he moved to the outfield. I also think that when the team that he came up with was a bunch of bad dudes. I think the mid 80s Mets, as you've seen documentaries, I don't think they were good people. They were drug abusers and, cocaine and all the things going on in that clubhouse. And they were an older veteran team that treated young players like crap. He came up. Greg Jeffries was the first guy I remember coming up with kind of like a Bryce Harper type hype.
Oh, the hype was off the charts for him.
Off the charts. And it was in New York too, which doesn't help.
Well, you throw the New York media into all of the other things you
New
just
York
mentioned.
media is still full of a bunch of some of the worst people on the planet when it comes to writing and covering sports. But he got crushed, and they treated him horribly, and I'm sure that had a negative impact on him. Could have been, should have been, in my opinion, if they'd handled it right when he was young, been a Hall of Famer, offensively at least. Okay, here's and this is kind of a cool little thing. So, Bill, you know the Pena kid for Houston, the shortstop?
Yes.
His father was the most physically talented player I ever played against in any level ever, anywhere. Geronimo Pena was a second baseman with the rookie ball Cardinals when we played them, and I want to say it might have been Savannah. I've never seen anything like it. Switch hitting, monster, like 50 home run power, 100 stolen base speed, unbelievable defender, just had it all. I was expecting him to be a Hall of Fame player. I saw him in the minor leagues, and he was one of those guys that made me question whether I could ever play in the big leagues. Got a taste of the big leagues and bounced around a little bit, never became anything, which was amazing. I thought he was the most physically talented human being I ever played against at any level. A name for you New Englanders. When I got traded to Baltimore in 1988, I was in Double-A with a pitching staff of pretty talented guys. One of the guys that I was playing with was named Mike Carista. He was my roommate in rookie ball, or in Greensboro the year before. Supremely talented guy, way ahead of his time as a pitcher. Had a good breaking ball, good changeup, but he was ahead of his. He was way ahead of his years maturity-wise pitching. Off the field, he left some things to be desired. A little bit of a rebel. Just got hurt. Never actually made it to the big leagues, but was the guy I was absolutely expecting to be somebody. 3 big league pitchers that I played with who one of them had a very good big league career. The other one I thought was going to have a better one, and the other one just never took off. Bob Milacki with the Baltimore Orioles. He came up, I think he went 4-0 in September in his first 4 starts, had a couple complete games, couple shutouts. One of the best changeups I've ever seen. Big horse of a guy. 245, 255 pounds, just muscle. Didn't throw hard, 89 to 91. With the phenomenal changeup. Injuries kept him from being who I thought he was going to be, but he blew onto the scene when the Orioles surprised the world, shocked the world in '89. Mac was one of the reasons why. And a teammate on that team and another pitcher who he had a very good career. He came out of college with probably as much hype as any pitching prospect in history. Ben McDonald came out of LSU, number 1. I mean, he was, well, you couldn't ask for more in a pitcher. He was 6'7", big, goofy looking 6'7", by the way. Big time, big league curveball right from the outset. Long, slender, big bodied pitcher. Ended up pitching. Injuries kind of another guy. Neither one of these guys didn't become who they were supposed to, or I thought they were going to be because of work ethic. They were both phenomenally talented, but Ben had a good career. And
Ben had the same kind of hype that Strasburg did when Strasburg came up. He really did. I expected him to be the next coming.
Yeah, he was pretty special. I think he threw a complete game in his first big league start too, if I remember right. A young kid I played with in Philadelphia, his name was Matt Beach, left-handed pitcher. And it was amazing. He came up and he beat Greg Maddux in his major league debut. And I don't believe he won another game in the big leagues, or he didn't win another game that year. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He beat Maddux and lost, I don't remember how many straight. And it was a combination of things, young pitcher, blah, 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 whatever. But I think a kid at the end of his career ended up being his own worst enemy out the field. Did a lot of stupid stuff away from the ballpark, but had supreme talent. And he like I said, he beat Maddox in his debut, and then that's kind of, it's almost like winning the Kentucky Derby, running your first race as a horse. You know, but where do you go from there? And a guy who was on some of those teams, who just didn't become the superstar I thought he was going to become, Desi Relaford. Shortstop, infielder, incredible athlete. Small guy, small build, cannon for an arm. Just never became the everyday star that his tools, I thought, made him to be. Great kid. But I got spoiled, and I used Desi as the analogy. My first couple years in the big leagues, my shortstop was Cal Ripken. And that's kind of an unfair barometer, but it wasn't the gameplay, it was the work ethic. And Cal Ripken worked harder than any shortstop I ever played with, by an immeasurable amount. And that was, so I would look at guys, I saw Desi, cannon, could hit, could run, could move laterally, had all the tools. And the work ethic didn't match anywhere near where Cal was. And it wasn't weight room stuff, it was baseball stuff. Cal did baseball stuff. He took 100 ground balls every day of his career. And I saw other guys who didn't work nearly as hard with every bit as much physical gift and physical talent. And I always wondered what Desi could have been had he been that guy who put the 25-hour day in. Let's see. One last one. A guy, and I had to reach back in the Wayback Machine to remember this one. When I was in Houston in 1991, we had a shortstop named Eric Yelding. And he came from the Toronto organization, and quick kid. I played against him. I played against him in the minor leagues. He was a star coming up in the minor leagues. We had if you go back to that 1991 Astro team, there was an immense amount of young talent around there. I thought he was one of those guys. I thought he would be a guy who played every day in the big leagues and got recognition and became somebody, and never did, never panned out. I don't know what it was, whether it was a combination of work ethic or what, but he was a guy you looked at and thought, okay, he's going to go places. But you know what? I can tell you, I played with hundreds of guys in the minor leagues who were far, far more physically gifted than guys I played with in the big leagues who never sniffed the big leagues. Because it is it's a narrowing down process that is cruel, and but it's absolute, because I always used to enjoy guys who talk trash at 550 during batting practice, because at 705 you can't lie. At 705 the rubber meets the road, and if you're going to talk trash at 505, you better back it up, because everybody on the field heard it, all your teammates saw it, and you're going to be held out for the phony you are if you keep opening your mouth and don't do stuff, and you're going to be gone pretty soon anyway. But that was what made the game, I think, so great and so cruel at the same time. It wasn't. I played with guys who loved the game 100 times more than guys I played with in the big leagues. But love of the game, even though it was a great movie, had nothing to do with being in the big leagues. I think love of the game had to do a lot with what you did off the field and how much work you put in off the field. But it had very little to do with keeping you in the big leagues. I think that's pride, fear of failure. Like I said, that was my big one. I was so afraid to fail that I would do anything and try anything. And I looked under every rock and talked to every person I could in the 20 years I was in the big leagues, all the way up until my last year, trying to get better every day. And, I always thought that saying, if I can get 1% better every day, whether it be through video or the weight room or a bullpen or an exercise or something every day, then at the end of the year, I'm 362% better than I was to start the year. And I believe that. I really did. And there are a lot of guys that did and worked like it. And then, and again, like I said, most of that list, it wasn't work ethic. It was just, you have to have some immensely lucky breaks, I think, every now and then, if you're not at the top of the scale from a talent perspective. But then I see a guy like Dustin Pedroia and realize Dustin didn't get any breaks. Dustin just played his ass off and made it to the big leagues at a size and a height when no one else thought he could. Same thing with Jose Altuve. These guys might not have a skill that you look at in high school and you go, wow, which Pedroia didn't. but he was a baseball player. Same thing with Kevin Youkilis. None of those guys are going to blow a scout away. And most of those guys back in the 70s wouldn't even have been drafted. Hey, don't forget, guys, OutKick.com. Up in the right-hand corner of the front landing page, click on shows. You'll find the Curt Schilling Baseball Show and a lot of other really good shows. Dan Dakich's show, Tommy Laren's show, obviously Clay's show. Some really, really good stuff. Good, solid, I think very solid content. And also on Spotify. You can find us on Spotify. So that's it for episode 34. Looking forward to catching up with you guys on Friday of this week. I keep forgetting. I got to tell you, Bill, life is good when you don't know if it's Monday or Friday. We'll catch you guys on the flip side Friday. Bill, Cal, John, you guys have a good week.